Hi everybody, it's your Uncle Mark, the family woodworker. Hey, this week we try out a new tool, the AtomStack A5 30-watt laser engraver and cutter. Stick around for the review. Researching my tool options, I wanted an engraver that could cover about a 15-inch square working surface. And depending on which product comparison website you might read through, the AtomStack rates pretty highly. It was less costly than the Xtool and cut a much bigger surface than the LaserPecker Mini at a lower cost as well.
You know, I have one simple request, and that is to have sharks with frickin' laser beams attached to their heads.
Well, I don't need sharks, but a freshly boxed laser? Yes, please. The materials come well packed and padded, but most of the frame will need to be assembled. The motor-driven laser carriage does come assembled, but the head and the rail need to be attached to the frame. I didn't want to spend a lot of time in this video running through the instructions and assembly. You can follow instructions, right?
Right.
But the assembly instructions are actually pretty good, with numbered parts bags corresponding to each build step. The AtomStack materials appear to be of really good quality, where the extruded aluminum rails were rigid and the pieces fit together well, squaring up really nicely as you screwed the components together. The hardest part of the whole assembly was feeding the drive belts around the sprockets on the stepper motors. You can choose to trim off the extra belt length, but I left mine in place in case I needed to make any adjustments later. These belts and motors allow for precise movement of the laser head along the X and Y axis of the machine. The instructions will guide you on how to do the full setup, including how to adjust the tension of the roller bearings on the guide rails, the installation of the red laser filter, and the simple connection of the wiring harness. It's good to note here that there is no on-off switch to this model, so I'd advise plugging the laser into a switchable power strip. First, you'll need to reset the laser head to the 0, position on the XY axis by moving it manually to the corner. The AtomStack laser head also works at a fixed focus position and needs to be spaced at the right distance from the working material you intend to engrave. There is a gray plastic spacer you'll need to use to measure the right distance from the laser head to the cutting material. You adjust the head height with these Allen screws and you're good to go. Based on the adjustability of the head height, you can actually work on some pretty thick material. The laser engraver does not work on its own. This is not a plug-and-play tool. Similar to a CNC machine, you'll need some computer skills, some new software, which can be free actually, and a willingness to go on a journey of self-education. And personal enrichment to figure out how to use the various engraving and printing options. But if this old dog can do it, you can do it. Now that the laser engraver is assembled, we'll need to install some software on our computer. And while you can buy software, Laser GRBL or Laser Gerbil is actually free to download. You'll also need the instruction manual to learn how to import files and set up the laser for engraving or cutting. I'll put those links in the video description. Let's talk safety. This tool is actually pretty dangerous to work with, and there's a couple of key safety considerations you'll have to contend with before you start playing with your new tool. First, the actual reflected light from the laser will damage your eyes. The red shroud on the laser head helps filter out most of that light, but you should always wear those sexy, high-fashion protective glasses when you're running your project. Ooh, baby! You should set up your laser device on a flat piece of sacrificial wood so the laser won't damage your work surface if it runs beyond the boundaries of your project. Finally, remember that you're actually burning material here, so this will set off a smoke detector in your home. Best to use this tool in an open ventilated area like a garage, or stay tuned to see how I created a vented solution inside my workshop. To begin using the laser, you'll need to follow the instructions to download the Laser Gerbil software and to load the custom buttons available too. Next, you'll need to load the Laser Gerbil driver onto your computer and finally set up the firmware to complete the connectivity from the software to the laser engraver. Like I mentioned earlier, this will require some computer skills, but the instructions are actually pretty good in this manual. Here, I've uploaded a black and white image of Mrs. Family Woodworker from a recent trip to the Badlands National Park. Since this is my first real test, I'll stick with some of the default settings on the setup, selecting the dithering option to produce a better photo image. I'll set the power to 10% because I'm not planning to cut this thin material, just engrave it. I'll also set up an offset from the 0, corner to start the engraving away from that corner. When you hit the Create button, you'll get a red image that is laid out in millimeters on the screen. You can check the position of the laser head against your material by choosing the Centering button. Or the Framing button will test the movement of the laser head around the perimeter of your project. When you're comfortable with all of the settings and the position of your wood stock on the burning table, hit the green arrow, which will start to run the program and begin the burn.
Ooh, burn!
Nothing about this laser process is fast, since you need to allow the heat from the laser to actually do something to the wood. But it's fun to check in on the progress and see something real get created by this machine. For my second trial, I chose to engrave some thin plywood with a quote I came up with about a year ago. Credit goes to the Red Green Show on CBC for the inspiration, and that's what you get when you're a kid growing up in Detroit watching too much Canadian comedy television. As it turns out, my settings had the head move too slow, and I was engraving too many lines per millimeter, so the cuts went pretty deep. In the end, the engraving cut about 1/3 of the way through the plywood, but the end result was pretty cool.
Say hello, Korg.
Hello, made of rocks. Thank you for having me, Paul. Sorry you're dead.
For my third test, I wanted to try an idea I had seen on other YouTube channels. While this laser can't cut through ceramic tile or metal, it will remove paint on those surfaces pretty nicely. So with some white paint on gray tile, I set up another dithering program to create an image of Korg, a character from Thor Ragnarok. I'm really liking how the dithering option works on graphic and photo images. Finally, I wanted to try cutting some material, but wound up choosing some 1/8 inch or 3mm hard maple for this test. That was a big mistake. I made 3 full power passes on these simple graphics and it didn't cut all the way through. I did create a lot of smoke, however, so the vent fan was working overtime. You can see that the laser did cut through in spots, but not completely. Still, this project was a good learning experience. To use this tool indoors, you will need some sort of way to vent the smoke out of the building. I built a burn box to house the Atom Stack and covered it with some clear plexiglass. I also set up some ventilation holes on one side of the box and added a 120-volt vent fan to pull the smoke out to some flex hose leading to the dryer vent pipe. I also set up the fan and the laser on a switchable power strip that I mounted to the side of the box. It was all built with scrap plywood and MDF, so it was a zero-cost build for the wood on this box. With a rubber door seal on the plexiglass top, the smoke stays inside the box and pulls through the dryer vent outside the house. Well, let's get into a little bit of a cost and an overall summary review. Altogether, I spent about $369 for all of the components to build up my solution. The Atom Stack that I bought was only available through 2021, and I think the model has changed. But you'll see prices with different wattages available anywhere from around $250 up to $369 for a 40-watt version from Atom Stack. In terms of a usage review, I thought the product cost was still reasonable, even though it's relatively high compared to other tools in my woodshop. But in terms of the value, how many projects I'm going to be able to use it on, I think this is going to be a tremendous tool. On the downside, I think the learning curve and the ease of use, a little difficult to learn how to use, but lots of options to be able to use this tool in the future. I'm pretty excited about it. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. I hope you consider subscribing to the channel and giving us a thumbs up. Thanks for stopping by.